The next utility that we have is Oracle Data Pump. Data Pump utility is an enhanced version of Oracle Export Import utility. There are many issues with Export Import utility which are addressed inside Data Pump. The biggest problem with traditional export import is security. Let us understand what is the security issue with export import. Let's take you have a database and you performed an export. This is your Scott underscore schema dot .dmp. That's the dump file. By looking at the file name, we can say that, okay, this is the Scott schema dump file. The problem with traditional export import is I can just take this dump file and import it into any database. Let's take this dump file gone into wrong hands. Anyone can import it into any database. There is no security with the dump file when it comes to export import. We can import the dump file literally into any database. We just have to use the import utility and we can perform multiple imports into different databases. In such cases, let's take if there is a sensitive export dump. If there is an export dump which is of real sensitive data, and if it by mistakenly gets into wrong hands, those people can take the dump and they can import and view the data. This way, the traditional export import utility does not provide any kind of security to the dump files. Anyone can pick up the export file and import it into any database. Now that we know the main drawback of export import utility, let us learn more about Oracle Data Pump and what are its benefits. As mentioned earlier, Data Pump is an extension to traditional export import utility, which provides more advantages like security, speed, and much more. When you perform Data Pump export, Oracle will create a master table in the corresponding schema. For example, if you are exporting data from the Scott user, then a master table will be created inside the Scott user and data will be transferred parallelly from the master table to the dump file. While importing with Data Pump, this process is reversed. First, a master table is created from the dump file and then data is imported to the tables. Please note, this master table is temporary table. It will be deleted after import or the export operation. In Data Pump also, you can perform different levels of export and import like database level, schema level, table level, row level. These are same as traditional export and import. But we have tablespace level export import introduced in Data Pump. Now you can export a tablespace from source and import it to target database. Here we have a note. In case you are using parallel option while exporting, import should also be done with the same parallel option. Otherwise, it will take time to perform the import. Next, we have Data Pump directory. Now, the way Data Pump works is different from export import. There is a new concept of directory which we need to understand. Let us look at high level as to how Data Pump directory looks like. When compared to traditional export import, in Data Pump what happens is when you perform an export from the database, this is your dump file. Before even performing the export, you need to specify what is the location where you are going to perform the export. Now this location has to be specified under SQL plus, and also you have to create this location at OS level. Until you declare the location both at OS level and inside the SQL plus, you cannot perform the export. Now this adds up a little bit of security level where first a directory has to be created by a DBA, both database level and at OS level, and then only someone can perform the export. The same way while importing, first you need to create the directory location where you have the import file, and this directory location again has to be created both at SQL level and OS level on the target server. Then you copy the export dump to the target import directory location, and then you perform the import inside the database. Basically, if the DBA did not create the directory at SQL level or at OS level, nobody can perform the export or import. Eventually, this is a very small layer of security where if the directories are not created, you eventually cannot perform either the export or the import. Let us look at the key points on data pump directory. It is actually a security feature as we discussed just now. If there is no directory, import or export is not possible. First of all, you must create a directory both at OS level and DB level. Then only you can use the directory via data pump. The directory is to be created again on target database. Also, it is not mandatory that you need to create same directory names both at the source and the target. The directory names can be different on target server. This just adds one more layer of security for performing export and import. In our upcoming lab activities, you will be learning data pump directory creation, performing data pump export and import. Let us look at how do we create the data pump directory, because we know that without creating the data pump directory, we cannot perform either the export or the data pump import. Remember, in data pump also, we use the term as export and import, but eventually we perform the export and import from a different utility than the traditional export and import utility. The syntax are different. We'll be looking at those syntax in our next lab. But right now we have to create a directory where we can perform the exports in the production database. Once we perform the data pump exports, we will SCP those exports to the test server, and again using the data pump we will import the dump file onto the test server. First of all, we need to create a directory at OS level, because if we don't have a directory at OS level, then we won't be able to perform the exports. We are creating a directory under U02, and the directory name is dpexpdir, nothing but data pump export directory. Let me create this one in the production, mkdir-p, and we can check this one, ls-ld. This is the directory. Yes, it is created and owner is Oracle user. Perfect. We also know that in data pump we have to create directory both at OS level and also at database level. Inside database there is a command called as create directory. You can give a name to your directory, specify the as keyword, and then give the location of your directory. So we'll run this command in the SQL Plus on production server, SQL Plus /ssdba. Make sure before running this command, this directory location should have been already created at OS level. If this directory is not created at OS level, while performing the exports or import, you will get an error. Also, we know that we can perform the export and import from two users. One is the user which owns the objects, another one is the sys user. Let's take you want to allow other user to perform the export and import. We need to grant read and write permissions on the directory data pump, which we just now created, to the specific user. But as I said, in real time, it is always good to perform export and import using the sys user, because you don't have to bother about these permissions and all. And it's very easy to perform export and import using the sys user. But in case, if there is an environment where it is specified to perform export and import using a specific user like Scott, then you need to grant the read and write permissions to this user on the data pump directory. If you don't grant these permissions, the Scott user will not be able to perform export using the data pump. Now, let's take you want to check all the directories which are created inside the database. You can query this view, select star from db_directories. Of course, over here you might see some different directories also. These are default directories which are already created inside the database. They come with your database when you create a database. Do not worry about those directories. Just check for the directory that we have just now created. Where is our directory? You can see data pump directory. This is the location for our data pump directory. The owner of the data pump directory is sys, because with the sys user we have created the data pump directory. Now in the source server or the production server where you are performing the export, we need to create a directory. Also on the target server where we'll be performing the import, we need to create a directory there as well. So here we have the test server, and on the test server what I'll do is I will probably create a different directory than the source server so that you get an idea that the directory names should not be same on both the servers. Let us create mkdir-p/u02 and I will give a new name imp_dir. This is nothing but data pump import directory. Now let us connect to SQL Plus /SSDPA, create directory data pump. You can eventually give a different name also to your directory as and give this location. Directory has been created. Let us assume you want to use the same name but would like to update the location. The same command you can also issue in this way: create or replace directory data pump as, and probably give a new location like u01 import dir, something like that. That way the old directory location will be updated inside the database. So we are not doing the replacement right now. Great. Both at the source we have an export directory, and on the target server also we have an import directory. Right now both the source directory and target directory naming conventions are totally different. Just for your understanding that we can have a different names also. Now that our directories are created at both source and target, let us go ahead and perform some exports on the production server, which we can import onto the test server. Great. Now that we have created the data pump directory both at the source server, nothing but our production server, and onto the test server, that is our import server. The syntax to invoke the data pump export utility is expdp. The traditional export utility is just exp, but in data pump you just need to add dp. Both export utility will be expdp and import utility will be impdp. Like in export utility, we can check the parameters. The same way in export data pump utility, we can use help equal to y to list out all the parameters which we can use in data pump. Remember, the data pump utility is enhanced version of export import. So the parameter names are a little bit changed, and even there is a change in the syntax that you define. You cannot use the export import utility parameters into this data pump utility. First of all, let us go ahead and check the help utility in the production. So let us exit from the SQL Plus and expdp help equal to y. Now you can see there are so many parameters listed out there, and you can use all these parameters in your export utility. In case if you want to refer any parameter, you can just type this command and look at the description of those parameters. Next, to take the database level export. As we can take the database level export in the traditional export import utility, same way with data pump you can again take the full database export. But as mentioned earlier, we cannot perform this activity. On the interview perspective, you should know the syntax. expdp will invoke the data pump export utility. Then you need to specify the directory. We are not specifying the location anywhere in the export command. The directory that we have created, nothing but the data pump directory, automatically EXPDP will connect to your database. It will take the location whatever we have defined in the data pump directory, and in that location we have to give the name of the dump file. Just mention the name, don't mention the location, because automatically location is coming from this parameter. Give the dump file name, then give the name of the log file and full equal to y. The full equal to y parameter is same both in traditional export and data pump export. There are two more changes. Initially in the export utility we mention file equal to, but in data pump the parameter is dump file. Same way in the export utility we specify log equal to, but in data pump it is log file. This makes more sense over here. We are not going to work on the full database export and import. Let us proceed with schema level export. You can perform schema level export like how we have done in export import utility. EXPDP, give the directory. You have to give the same name of the directory that you have created inside the database. Give the dump file name. Automatically this dump file will be created under the data pump directory. Give a name to your export log file, and then you need to specify schemas equal to and give the schema name. In the export import utility you specify owner, but over here we specify schemas. Let us go ahead and perform a schema level export using data pump. So we'll use EXPDP directory equal to data pump, dump file scott underscore backup.dump, log file equal to scott backup.log, schemas equal to scott. Let us run this utility in the production server. Give the username sysdba. Now this sysuser export will be performed via the data pump utility. This is not your regular export import utility. Great, export is completed. And if you see the output of the export log, it is neatly designed, and you can even read through the exported table, department, employee, flash EMP, sal grade, bonus. All these tables are exported. Also, as we know that whenever you perform an export and import, there will be one master table that is created. This master table was created successfully after dumping the contents of the master table into the dump file. This table is cleared from the database. Now this is the dump file. We will get the location of the dump file also. Automatically the directory location is picked up from the database because we specified the directory equal to data pump, and this is our dump file. Let us go to the export location cd and let us check our dump files. Yes, we have the scott backup dump file, and this is the export log file. Perfect. The schema level export is pretty straightforward. Same way we can perform a table level export. We have to use EXPDP, directory equal to data pump, give the dump file name, give your export log file. Now you need to specify tables equal to owner.table name. If you want to export multiple tables, you can just issue comma and again give department table. And also it is not restricted that you export only single user tables. In the same export you can even export like hr.abc, some table. Likewise you can export different tables from different schemas as well. Let us go ahead and export the employee table, single employee table. EXPDP directory equal to data pump. Our dump file is emp backup, log file, and then tables equal to scott.emp /sysdba. Great. The Scott table has been exported successfully, 14 rows. If you look at the benefit of the directory, we don't have to specify the location again and again. We set the location once and for all inside the database, and we just fire the export utility, automatically all our exports will go to one location. Now we have the schema export and we also have the table level export. Also in data pump we have the row level export. Same way like our export utility, we have to invoke the data pump utility, define the directory, your dump file name, log file name, and then tables, specify the table, define the query. The query parameter is same as our export utility, where department number is 10. You can even put any other difficult clause also. Let's take you want to have department number equal to 10 and salary is greater than 20,000, something like that. You can have complex queries over there. Whatever query you put in, only those rows will be exported out of the employee table. This way, these are the different commands which I recommend you guys to practice in your test servers. As I said earlier also, try to create some dummy users, dummy tables, and then perform the exports. In our next lab, we will be performing the imports onto the test server. Now that we have the data pump export, we will practice and work on the data pump import utility. Same way how we can check the parameters in data pump export. In the import utility also you can type impdp help equal to y. So let me run this command and see we again have parameters that we can use in the import utility. Next, to import the full database, it is the same command impdp directory. Now this directory should be the directory name on the target server where you are performing the import. In our case, we have created the same directory both on the production and the target. I'm talking about the name. Of course, the location physically is different, but the directory name is same as data pump. What you need to do is when you SCP the dump file from the production server onto the test server, you need to copy it into the data pump location that you have defined. On the test server, we can see that our data pump directory is U02 data pump import directory. This directory name is different than our source server. The location is different, but the name is same. We can even keep a different name also if we want. When you copy the dump file or SCP the dump file from production server to the test server, you need to copy that dump file into this location. If you do not copy the dump file into this location, the import will not work. Now when you run the impdp utility, the directory name that you specify, this name should be the test server directory name. In the test server, our directory name is data pump, but the location is this one. Automatically while importing, the impdp utility will go to this location and pick up your dump file. All in all, you need to keep the source dump files into this location. Next, you have to give the dump file name. This name should be exactly the same dump file name that you copy from the production server. Next is log file. Nothing but you can give a log file name, whatever you want. This is the import log file, and then specify full equal to y. This is for the full database import. We are not going to see the full database export or import. Next, to import a single schema. Let's take, okay, we have the export of the Scott user, right? We can use the impdp utility, specify the import directory name, the directory name in the target server, then give the dump file name same as the source dump file, specify the log file name, you can give any log file, and there is a new parameter called as remap schema in the impdp utility. In the remap schema parameter, you need to specify the source schema name and then colon, then specify the target schema name. In case if you are importing into the same user, you need to specify both the same users, and if you are importing it into a different user, then you specify the other username. Now we have the Scott user export, but let us try to import the Scott user into IMP underscore test user. If you remember, we have created this test user initially in the import utility. Before running the import command, what we need to do is we need to get the dump file from the production server onto the test server. This is the production server, ls-lrt. Let me SCP the scott backup.dump file to oracle @192.168.0.203 : and where should we keep this dump file? We have to keep the dump file into the directory location that we had created. Don't keep it into other location because your import utility will not be able to pick it up from the other location. Give the password. Done. The dump file is copied. On the target server, we'll exit. Now we'll go to this location. Check if you have the dump file or not. Yes, we have the dump file. Let us proceed to import this dump file. Nothing but we are cloning the Scott user from the production server into a new user or a different user onto the target server. Yes, we can clone same user, but we are looking at a different scenario in case if we have to clone it to a different user. IMP-dp directory equal to data pump. Now this directory data pump will be picked up from this database because we are running the IMP-dp utility on the test server. It won't pick up the directory name of your source server or whatever you have used on the export side. Next is dump file. Just give the dump file name because automatically the location will be picked up. Then specify a name for your log file, imp_scott.log. Then remap_schema. Just specify the export schema name. It is Scott, and we would like to import into imp_test. Enter. Give the username /sysdpa. We are trying to import the Scott user contents into the IMP test user onto the test server. Great. We can see that imported IMP test department, IMP test flash EMP, IMP test sal grade, and IMP test bonus. All these 4 tables are imported into our new schema. If we check the export log, cat scott backup.log, there were how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tables were there. And onto the target also, 1, 2, 3, 4. It says, okay, now one table EMP, employee table, is already existing into IMP_test user. That's why it is not able to create or recreate that table. So table exists action to skip. By default, if a table is already existing with the same name, IMP-dp utility will skip it. So this way you can perform export and import of one complete schema into a different user. You might also see some OR errors. Object grants fail. As I said earlier, in our test database, the sales clerk role is not created. So that's why it is not able to grant the permissions to the sales clerk. Now, these kind of issues you need to resolve with the application team, whether they really want this role to be recreated or they just want the table data. And if they have the table data, they can continue. In case if they say that no, we also want this role to be created, then you can recreate this role inside the test server. Next, to import a table, you just invoke the IMP-dp utility, specify the directory name on the target server, give the dump file name. This is the dump file name what you have SCP'd from the production server. Give a log file name. Then you specify the tables that you want to import. As I said earlier, you can specify multiple tables by comma separated values. Also, let's take you want to import a table into a different schema or a same schema. That also you can specify under the remap schema. When you specify Scott:*Scott, it will import the employee table which was exported with Scott user again back to the Scott user. Let's take you want to import it into a different user. You can specify that username and the table will be imported into the new user. We already have an example to import a table to another user. Everything will be same, but inside remap schema, you will specify the new username. Next is to import tables to another table space. This is only possible in the data pump utility. There is a new parameter called as remap table space. Let's take on the source, the table space was different, and on the target you want to import the table into a completely new table space. Then you can specify both the table spaces into this parameter remap table space. Now what I would request you guys is practice these export and import commands via the data pump in your lab activities. These are very simple commands, but you need to logically think the entire flow of the data and the dump file. Just make sure you practice more of the data pump utility than the export import utility, because right now the data pump is being used more. It was introduced in the 10G version, and from 10G onwards data pump is highly used when compared to traditional export import because of a lot of features, and also the data pump is faster when compared to export import utility. Of course, the export import utility is also available in all the versions of the database, but still the data pump was introduced from 10G, and as I said earlier, you cannot perform an export from the traditional export utility and perform an import using the data pump. If you have performed export using the export import utility, then you have to import using the same utility. If you perform an export using data pump, you have to import using data pump only.